Hey guys, what's happening? So for this one, we're getting into the full story of Dungeons of Doom. Because now with Doom gone, supposedly, just about everyone's dying to get what he had. Literally. So with that said, if you're enjoying these videos, be sure to drop a like, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and don't forget to hit that bell up top to get all notifications. Alright, so going into this, we head back over to Latveria, where we're told it was once called the Jewel of the Balkans, a place of mirth, culture, and natural beauty. In modern times, it holds less flattering titles. The Monster's Den, the Iron Jewel, Doom's Shadow. And just like we were told before, with Doom gone, this place is now a war zone. And throughout this, we'll see that it goes far beyond what we've dropped into now, which is just the US soldiers against some Latverian freedom fighters. But this continues with the narration from General Ross with him saying, Victor Von Doom is dead. His strongholds lie empty. His people are leaderless. Allies, rivals, enemies, and vassals alike scramble to gather up his leavings. For who can know what secret treasures Doom has hiding within its walls? So on one hand, we have the Latverian freedom fighters, who for the most part are just trying to hold their own and not have their home taken by the US or anyone else for that matter. They're just trying to stop the American conquest. But they really and truly aren't aware of the secrets and hidden artifacts that Doom has in his possession. And really no one is, not in its entirety at least. And even with that being the case, some of these guys do know a little bit more than your average Latverian, but we'll get back to that. But nonetheless, there are some dangerous secrets hiding away here, which is part of the reason why the US has given General Ross the green light to make sure that America has control. And now for a moment here, we get a bit of a back and forth between Sergeant Major Woods and General Ross, where Woods tells him that they pushed the freedom fighters back. But Ross doesn't even like the idea of calling these guys freedom fighters, because the way he sees it, if they wanted freedom, they'd let the US take over. But during this, out of nowhere, the US troops get hit from above, because now Hydra's here, and they're aiming at both US and Latverian forces. And at this point, the freedom fighters have their back to the gate in the firefight with US troops, and Hydra's timed this so that the US has done most of the work to the point where all they gotta do now is just swoop in and take out both sides. So now the freedom fighters are scattering and the US troops are calling for air support. But as you might expect, General Ross, he's not just gonna let Hydra swoop through and just take the castle. So he tells his men, fine, I'll do this myself, just like I always do. And when General Ross goes in as the Red Hulk, he goes in. And he goes hard. In fact, he goes so hard that it sends himself, along with a handful of Hydra agents, some Latverian freedom fighters, and a small group of US troops deep under the ground. And with how this is done, they're all separated, which from here is what takes us into different chapters where we follow these different groups as we go on to see who else has made their way to Latveria. But in chapter 1, we start out with General Ross and the US troops, with him being separated from the group and trying to round them all up. But as they gather themselves and cut on their flashlights and take a look around, they find themselves so far under Castle Doom that when they look up, there's no light or no sign of where they fell from. And just know, this is the uncharted territory we were talking about in Will of Doom. And really just one of those locations, because back in Will of Doom, when Foggy and Cole were telling Reed and the others how they weren't able to get a full picture of what all exactly Doom owned, that's because for years, Doom has had a lot of secrets tucked away in Latveria, which not only made it impossible for someone on the outside looking in to try to put a specific price tag on everything that he's owned, but it's also been nearly impossible for the military to fully map this place out without physically being here, which is very much a risk in its own right. But as General Ross is trying to dig through and find the Major and the others, this stirs up a whole new problem for the pack, because as Ross is punching his way through the ground to get to these guys, it now has the roof coming down on them, so they gotta move. And it's almost set up like a scene out of a classic horror movie, because the path these guys take, it's a way where the door's already broken open, so they gotta take it. And when they do, we find out that this could possibly be the worst room that they could have walked into. Because when they walk in, they see this guy who's been chopped up and seemingly experimented with. And as they approach, a pre-recorded message begins to play. And the voice recording starts here saying, "This is the voice of Professor Charles Xavier. If you are hearing this message, you have tripped a proximity alarm. Turn back. This room was never meant to be opened. It holds an organism beyond your comprehension. A mutant who should never have been born." And now just based on the title of this chapter, with it being called The Whisper Man, and us seeing this dude with his mouth stapled or stitched shut, in addition to Xavier's warning, which clearly indicates that he knows this guy's here, the details of this telepathic message imply that there was some sort of dark agreement between Xavier and Doom. But this is just one of many discoveries, or horrors I should say, that have yet to be found. And after this, for chapter 2, next we head over to the Latverian freedom fighters, But right away we find out these guys had a much rougher landing, and some cases were much worse than others. Much worse. But as these guys try to round up who they can and regroup, they end up coming across one of the Hydra agents who survived the fall. Kinda. So at first they're like, what should we do with him? Then one of these guys asks him, why is he here? And the Hydra agent's just like, you don't even know what you're guarding, do you? Then he's like, but you're gonna find out. And dude pulls out a knife. And mind you, he has absolutely no reach. Buddy is pinned under a rock. But even still, the freedom fighter leans in, knocks up that arm, and he's like, hey, hold this for me. And from there, they keep it moving. And as they do, the big guy out of this group, I think his name is Boris, he's over here thinking out loud, like, where's there to go when you're nowhere? We need to get the hell out of here, man. This place is a death trap. And mind you, all of this is translated from Latverian. But the leader of this group, Alexander's like, shut up and remember your dignity. And now from here, he leads them to an area of the dungeon that's called the Crypt of Monsters. And Alexander lets the others know, since they couldn't defend this place, they're turning to a whole new strategy. And their new strategy isn't so much the case of looking for survivors and killing them, because one of those survivors is a Hulk. So instead, their new plan is something more like a race. So this is where Alexander pulls out a map and he tells the others, we have an advantage. Doom killed all the engineers and construction workers who built this facility, but not before they leaked information to a rebel faction. And he goes on to let them know in this room, in the Crypt of Monsters, this is where terrors are buried. But also inside one of these tombs, there's a shortcut that'll give them a passage to the deepest dungeon, where Doom keeps his most closely guarded secrets. So from there, he calls for a couple of the fellas to help him open this tomb, and come to find out, what they discover inside is definitely not a shortcut. So for a moment here, they try to put up a fight, only to quickly learn that bullets are not helping them out here. So it's either stay here or die or find that shortcut. But now this continues with the narration from General Ross, with him saying, they all have their reasons for being here, the scars they carry that will never heal. Boys watched his parents be electrocuted by Doombots. Fadir was tortured. Sophia spent most of her childhood in a work camp. That's where her jaw was torn off and replaced with a scrap Doombots. And Alexander, he lost his sister. And now this leads to a moment where he believes that he's guided by his sister, with her telling him which tomb to open. So he tells the others the passage is here. And Sophia's like, how do you know? So he tells her, I made a mistake before, but this is the way. I promise. And we have no choice. Then from here, going into chapter 3, this takes us to the Hydra agents, who for a moment are trapped in their vehicle down here with gas leaking inside. So one of them lights a torch so they can see, and dude's like, keep that torch away from the fuel, idiot. But another one of them, a guy by the name of Fuelis, it's looking bad for him. He probably has a broken back. So a bunch of these guys help carry him out because he's dead weight, all except for one dude who didn't even want to make contact with the poor guy. But once they're out and they start looking around for an exit, they see a hammer sitting off to the side on top of an anvil. So another one of them goes to pick it up, but it doesn't budge. So Mr. Don't Touch Me with the blonde hair here is like, hey, leave it. We need to find a way out. So he heads to the door, he tries to push, it won't budge. But this whole time, all the other crew members, their concern is about their man on the ground, who's unable to move on his own. And when he tries to talk, they tell Mr. Don't Touch Me that Thulis is trying to say something. And dude walks towards him like, oh, is he? I have something to say as well. And he just shoots the poor fella. But right away, that's when he starts to hear something that the others can't, because it's a voice coming from the hammer talking to him, and only him, with it whispering the word worthy. And now with this third chapter being called Spixemi, which I think is Icelandic for betrayal or deceptive behavior, this guy's just earned himself the worthiness to wield this new power. And next, when we go to chapter 4 titled The Wakandan, we continue with more narration from General Ross, with him saying he flies at night. In Wakanda, they call him Umbra, meaning shadow. Since the fall of Doom, Latveria has descended into chaos, a war zone of competing forces. Wakanda wants a piece of the land, resources, wealth, power. But Umbra is not Wakandan, even if he is here at their behest. He wants only one thing, one small thing, and then he will be on his way. His king might be the Black Panther, but he acts alone, as he serves another. And throughout this, we see Umbra land on top of Mount Doom and make his way inside. But really quick, this guy is like the dark opposite of the Black Panther. So instead of the heart-shaped herb, this guy's all about the skull-shaped herb. And instead of serving Bast, his god is this huge bat named Nagiku. And now he's come here to get some crazy power upgrade. And he's instructed by Nagiku, I think that's how you say it, to kill any who stand in his way. And now Ross continues here saying the dungeons of Doom have been quiet for a long time. They welcome these visitors, who now must survive the shadows without and within. Alright, so getting back into Dungeons of Doom, this continues the gold rush in Latveria, where now that Doom's gone, everyone's fighting to take what he left behind. So you've got General Ross and his US troops, you have Hydra swooping in to take what they can, you've got Latverian freedom fighters trying to defend Doom's estate, but like we saw early on, this led to General Ross going a little too hard, which sent himself and members of these different groups tumbling below into the dungeons of Doom, which is where the story continues as we follow these different groups, starting with General Ross, the Red Hulk, to where now as he finds one of his men who has been separated, literally. But even now, he still has radio contact with the troops who survived the fall, so he's looking for them because they've got a job to do. Because as far as the general is concerned, Latveria belongs to the US. And if you'd like to get a bit more context on the how, when, and why General Ross claimed Latveria, I have a link to that full story in the description. And if you also want to know a bit more about the history between the US and Latveria in the new Captain America story, which shows us how the US helped Doom get into power in the first place, I have that link in the description as well. But in the here and now, as General Ross is continuing to look for his troops within the dungeons of Doom, it's a straight up horror story down here. Because like we saw, his troops ended up finding this mysterious mutant, who we only know as the Whisper Man. And really, just looking at this guy and the whole setup going on around him, it's some wild stuff. Because this dude is strung up, cut open, with his limbs hanging on the other side of the room, his mouth is sewn shut, and there's all sorts of jars all over the place with organs in them, which seems like it's all a combination of torture and experimentation. And now when these troops first arrived, they heard a message saying, "This is the voice of Professor Charles Xavier. If you are hearing this message, you have tripped the proximity alarm. Turn back. This room was never meant to be opened. It holds an organism beyond your comprehension, a mutant who should never have been born." And now when the troops get here, they do just about anything but turn back. Because Major Simmons, he reaches out to Ross to find out what they should do. But the Sergeant Major, he's over here like, how about we do nothing? Because on one hand, the obvious part is they're fighting so that the US can take possession of everything that's down here, every powerful artifact. But the part where all these guys fell right into the dungeon, that wasn't part of the plan. So the safe decision would be to keep it moving. And that's what the Sergeant Major tells them. We need to go and don't even think about touching anything, because we're looking for a way out and this ain't that. But when another one of the soldiers is like, "Hey, I heard something. Did anyone else hear?" Whispering. And he goes on to shine a light on the Whisper Man's chest, where inside, as we saw, there's this device with a ton of gears that's been placed into him that suddenly clicks. And it's like a jump scare, because the Whisper Man then just starts wiggling around. And the soldiers are like, yo, how is this guy even alive? And even with seeing all this, Major Simmons still goes to cut him down. And the other troops are basically like, bro, I know you playing. And they're like, no, sir, wait. Doom put him in here. Think this through. And the Major doesn't listen like you'd imagine in a horror movie, because he just cuts the dude's mouth free. And that's where the Whisper Man starts talking crazy, in a strange voice saying these words that they can't understand, just before these blue lights and vapors come splashing out of his neck and his chest, in a way that strongly resembles the mutant chamber. But in this case with the Whisper Man, we still don't know what exactly his powers are. We're just thrown directly into this horrific demonstration, because when he explodes, letting out this glowing blue vapor, followed by this strange sound, and the Sergeant Major breathes it in. But when Simmons comes over to check on the Sergeant Major, for a brief moment he's out of it, and he ends up seeing these memories from the Whisper Man, where he had taken control of an insane number of people through what looked to be a similar process. And we also get a moment here where we're given a somewhat better look at him, where he has this pentagram on his chest, which is something we also saw in the room when the troops first got there. And I imagine this pentagram is leading towards some sort of mysticism or balance kind of meaning in association with his powers, because in addition to this, we often see his head, his 2 arms, 2 legs, reaching out in a similar star-like position. So that could be something he needs to do to exert his power at full efficiency. Who knows? But there's definitely something significant about the pentagram and the number 5 with this guy, as well as the whole clock thing. But we'll come back to that, because we'll see his pose change when the numbers change as well. And I say that to say, if all this lines up, I can understand why Doom would remove this guy's arms and legs. But also in this memory, he's going up against Dr. Voodoo, Emma Frost, and Charles Xavier, which I imagine took place some time ago based on Emma's outfit. But nonetheless, it is a wild thing to see. But eventually when the Sergeant Major responds and he gets up like, I'm good. Now Major Simmons is like, nobody touch anything. We're getting the hell out of here. And it's like, bro, I know you ain't talking sticky fingers. Because as they head out, General Ross responds on the comms, asking for their location. So Major Simmons responds, telling him that they're down to 5 and they're heading west down the corridor. So Ross is like, I'm down here too. Found Booth dead, no other contact yet. And that's where Simmons tells Ross about the device planted in the Whisper Man's chest. And what Ross tells him here, this falls in line with the whole change of plans given their current situation thing. Because again, the smart move would be to not touch anything and get out of there. But instead, General Ross is like, tell me you kept it, Simmons. We're not the only ones down here. And of course, Simmons has it on him. He did take it, but it's one of those things where you gotta ask yourself, like, was it worth the risk? Because now the Sergeant Major, who we saw inhale a ton of that blue mysterious chest smoke, he's over here sweating and coughing, talking about how his throat hurts. And when he tries to tell them to get him some water, it comes out of that strange and eerie sound that the Whisper Man was making. And that's why the other troops are looking at him like, hey, what's wrong with him? Like, why you sound like that? Like, don't do that. And when they end up eventually coming across the Hydra agents we saw before, who came crashing down with some of the local freedom fighters, the US troops see a light from above and they're like, okay, this could be a way out. But then with little to no warning, one of the freedom fighters, who's still alive, just starts letting off shots, lighting up one of the troops. And Ross hears it. And what's crazy here is that the Sergeant Major, the one who he saw inhale the Whisper Man smoke and see the vision and all that, he goes off and he absolutely wrecks this guy while speaking in the Whisper Man's strange language. But when this happens, it almost seems as if it's the Whisper Man doing this because he needed 5 of these soldiers and this freedom fighter took them down to 4. Which again is just a theory that I have based on the reoccurring theme of 5 that we keep seeing around the Whisper Man, because it's almost like once this happens, the Sergeant Major just goes off, as if the other members of his team were no longer of any good, because he then starts to attack them, almost as if the Whisper Man needed 5 of them to do something in a certain amount of time. Like, I'm just thinking out loud, because to me that would begin to explain why they found so many clocks around him. But again, these soldiers, they're not paying attention to any of this, they're just doing a job, and they are way too freaked out, and reasonably so. But they are way too freaked out to try to make any sense of this in real time. Cause put yourself in their shoes. Imagine falling into Doom's dungeon just to find out Marvel's been hiding a Dr. Manhattan this whole time. Cause there's even similarities in that case, but I'm not going down that rabbit hole. Not yet at least. But the Sergeant Major, he ends up splashing, and all the while, General Ross is trying to radio them and figure out what's going on. Cause he heard the gunfire. So he's trying to reach out to Simmons, but he's not responding. And the next thing we see is that memory with the Whisper Man, who's now holding a similar yet different position. But yeah, I'm curious to know you guys' thoughts on the Whisper Man, because every time we see more, he just starts to feel creepier and creepier. And now after this, we head back over to Umbra, the Wakandan, who we saw make his way here to Doom's dungeon in issue 1. And again, in a lot of ways, this guy's like the inverse to the Black Panther. In much of what I talked about when we covered the last issue, it ends up happening in this one in relation to why he's come here. But in addition to him serving the bat deity, Nagiku, the Wakandan tech he uses, it also mimics that which you'd see from a bat. Because when he gets here and he's looking down into this pitch black labyrinth, Umbra uses echolocation to navigate his way through, which is a huge advantage in his case, and really his suit in general, because everyone else we've seen who's just fallen into the dungeons of doom, many of them are still trying to get their bearings, versus Umbra, who's able to head directly towards what he came for. And we're told as he makes his way, there are others here. And if they are in his way, they are his enemy. When people think of Wakandan power, they think of vibranium mines beneath the Great Mound, but there are other hidden treasures. Doom has stolen much from them. But Umbra is here for one item in particular. And now as Umbra enters Doom's Stuff I Stole from Wakanda section, he starts to hear the voice of Nagiku saying, the heart-shaped herb allows you to travel to the ancestral plane, but the skull-shaped herb brings the ancestral plane to our world. The dead can live. Your wife can live again. And now 2 things, because what's interesting about this, first is the mention of his motivation. He lost his wife and he wants her back. Secondly, there's the whole aspect of why Nagiku wants Umbra to do this and what other motivations might be hidden there. Because I imagine much like how T'Challa's an avatar for Bast, Nagiku's looking to use Umbra in a similar way, though on the flip side with very nefarious intentions. And now from here, when we go to chapter 3 and continue the story of Spixemi, or Betrayal, with the surviving Hydra agents who recently found this hammer that can only be lifted by someone who is not trustworthy, which is why this guy Valence is able to pick it up after killing one of his own men. But now with him and the other remaining Hydra agents trapped in this room, one of these guys is like, can you use it to break through that door? And the other's like, man, if you do, it's gonna be loud and the Americans are gonna find us. But Valence doesn't care and he just smashes the door. Because to him, it's like, it's better that the Americans hear us and they come to attack than us just sitting here in this room in the dark and dying together. And when the others see this insane display of power exerted, they're like, okay, this is more than just a hammer. And that's when he tells them Spixemi. Spixemi is its name. That's the name that it spoke to him. And immediately this kicks up a huge argument because the guy who spotted the hammer, Manx, he starts going off like, hey, I saw it first. And he goes from that to just pulling rank, like, hey, I saw it first, give it to me. But dude's just like, no, it's mine. You were too weak, remember? And the other guy's in the corner like, how about we just leave it? Because there's always that one smart and logical person in a horror situation that no one listens to. So Valence just continues to go on his way with the hammer, only to take a few steps out of the room and get lit up by gunfire from above, mortally wounding him. So that's where Manx sees the hammer and his opportunity. So he's like, oh yeah, it's my turn now. But he's not able to lift the hammer. Because again, Valence was only able to do it when he killed the other Hydra agent. So now when he starts making fun of Manx, since he still can't lift the hammer, this ends up turning into an opportunity for Manx to become worthy. And it's kind of wild, because as Manx is getting roasted, he's basically over here like, oh, I'm weak, huh? Well, you want to know what I can lift? As he takes this huge boulder and he drops it on old boy's head. And it's not even like Manx knew what he needed to do in order to become worthy. He just killed Valence because he was talking junk with his dying breath. But as soon as he does, Manx is able to hear the hammer himself, because now it's speaking to him. So he goes to lift it. And after this, when we go to chapter 4 and continue with the Latverian freedom fighters, who are led by Alexander, who just led his team into a tomb that's like a doorway after following what he believes to be the ghost of his dead sister, who was killed by Doom along with the rest of his family after Alexander joined the freedom fighters. And this is one of those situations where it's like he's not even 100% if it's her, though he really wants to believe that it is, and he's literally betting his life and the life of his team members on the possibility that they're being led to safety. But given the circumstance that they were in, they kind of didn't have a choice, because it was like either blindly trust this ghost or get killed by whatever this thing was. So again, I don't blame him for taking his chances with the ghost. And now this leads him and the others through this deep waterway passage. And it goes on to say here, for more than a year, the Latverians were imprisoned in a world beyond this one, a subatomic rift. So the Dungeons of Doom feel familiar, a hidden place that has its own dark rules and reality, a place where ghosts are real, where death is familiar. Which reminds me of what we saw in the 2020 Thor series when Doom kidnapped Hela and used the people of Latveria to create his own afterlife as a way to prepare for the end of all things, which was a part of the whole story with the Black Infinity Stone, but this was just one of the many crazy examples that comes to mind out of the recent events where we've seen Doom use his own people in order to get something done. And this wasn't the last time. So with Alexander saying this experience is familiar, I can just imagine the people of Latveria have had multiple experiences that have seemed similar to this. But this continues saying, darkness beats at the edge of his vision like crow wings. It will claim him soon. Any second now. And then, just as he's about to give up, he's coughed into the air again. The chamber looks somewhere between a tomb and a temple, devoted to Konu. And now as soon as they get here, Alexander tells the others the dungeon's under attack and that they need to hurry. And that's where Sophia's like, what about Boris? So he just tells him to go ahead and he'll look after Boris. But as soon as they leave, the ghost of Alexander's sister, Catalina, she comes back and she tells him to kill Boris, because whatever came out of that first coffin that they were running from, it's inside Boris now. So Alexander listens to her and he does this. He kills Boris, but you can tell he didn't want to, because even when she's saying, kill him, brother, he'd do the same for you. Alexander's just like, this feels wrong, but he still does it. And when she tells him to get rid of him, he puts his body in the water, because I imagine for him there's also the whole idea of him not wanting Boris to just rise up and kill everybody else here. But back over with Sophia and Fedir, the two of them end up stumbling across the Eye of Konu, which as it would seem is just one of those things that Doom had in his possession to either hide away from everyone else or use at his own discretion. And this is one of the things I like about Dungeons of Doom the most. And really I wish this series would go longer than just 3 issues, because you could have any artifact down here and just make something up. And not just artifacts, but characters like the Whisper Man. But you can literally have anything down here and hide it away, and whatever story you put behind it will make sense. Because as we know, Doom just be taking stuff. But nonetheless, while they're here, Fedir is basically like, we probably shouldn't touch it, because their intention was to protect the dungeons, not raid them. But Sophia's like, look, we are surrounded by all sorts of hostiles. We need some kind of way to defend ourselves. And that's where she picks up what we find out is the Eye of Konu. And we're told here the Eye of Konu does not give you wealth, strength, or eternal life. It gives you sight, the ability to see the secrets chambered inside of all of us. Lies, misdeeds, cruelties, thefts, affairs, shames, and embarrassments. Whatever we lock away in the dungeons of our mind. And this goes on to show us how, for Fedir, at one point he'd struggled with a drug addiction, him and Boris were intimately involved, and we even see Fedir killing a group of Hydra agents. But Sophia, she's able to see all of this and comfort him to tell him like, hey, it's okay. And now something to keep in mind that we'll likely see more of at a later time is that the Eye of Konu is more valuable than any weapon that any other country could find down here, because to have the ability to see into anyone's mind and see everything that they've done, that's insanely valuable. But while they're here, Alexander comes back and he's like, you found it, the Eye of Konu. So Fedir's like, where's Boris? And Alexander's like, oh, he's resting in peace. But no, then Sophia's like, what did you do, Alexander? And she's able to see what he did. She sees him kill Boris, though it's without context. All she knows is that he killed him, so she calls him out on it. And of course, Fedir is upset about it. But Alexander's like, hold on, that's not fair. Because again, it's not like he wanted to do it. It's more like he was doing what he believed to be the safe call. But then that's when the ghost of his sister, Katerina, tells Alexander that he needs to kill the both of them. or they're going to kill him. So both him and Feder draw their guns. But Sophia stops this right away and she tells them this place is turning us against each other. And while they're trying to sort this out, that's when Boris comes back as a bloater. Nah, but the infection that had taken him over, it hasn't stopped. So in a way, I imagine this proves that Alexander didn't just kill him just to kill him, but instead he should be like, yo, this is what I was trying to stop. But yeah, with how this story is unfolding, for whatever reason, I would like to see Alexander replace his eye with the eye of Khonshu at some point. And who knows, disappear and come back as a fake Doom or something. Alright, so as soon as this comes back, we start out with the Whisper Man, just after Sergeant Major Woods blew up. And at this time, General Ross, he's still trying to reach out to these guys and find where they are, with him trying to radio to Sergeant Major Woods, who's completely done, and the other 4 who are still here, because now we're shown that this guy from issue 2 didn't die. He's still with us for now. So with Sergeant Major gone, we still got 4 for now. But following the death of Sergeant Major Woods, all of these guys can hear the weird sound from the Whisper Man, not just Major Simmons, who we saw take the Whisper Man's device. And it's almost like in this moment, Major Simmons begins to realize that this isn't going to end well for any of them, because whatever this is, they can't let this spread. And that's where one of his men, Tompkins, is like, I can still hear it, not just in my ears, but in my bones. And this dude is terrified for good reason. And he's just like, man, I don't want to die this way, man. I won't. And he's just holding his gun, however. So one of these guys got to tell him, hey, man, muzzle awareness. And when he makes a move for the opening to try to get out of there, he starts talking the crazy Whisper Man language. And that's where Major Simmons tells Tompkins to stop, because they can't let this spread. And when Tompkins doesn't stop, Simmons starts shooting. And it comes to the point where Simmons is the last one who's still in his right mind. And it turns out to come in pretty clutch, because when his other 3 men start singing the Whisper Man's tune, Simmons radios out to Ross to warn him, as Ross is currently punching his way through these walls trying to get to these guys, because he's been hearing the gunshots and he knows some of his men are still out there to some capacity. And as Ross gets closer, the signal gets clearer. So Simmons tells him, leave us, get to the surface. The device held some kind of organism and we let it out. We're all infected. And mind you, Simmons is trying to hold out long enough to get Ross the information so the Whisper Man doesn't get him next. All the while, Simmons is taking out the other men, the last 3 men, so this doesn't spread any further. But Simmons goes on here saying, it lives in some kind of melody, kills the host, spreads through sound. When it dies, it's getting louder, sir. Don't worry, won't let it out again. Don't come for us. But Ross keeps punching his way through. And eventually when he gets to where Simmons and the others were, Ross sees 4 bodies. So he remembers what Simmons said about it spreading through sound, so General Ross digs up some rocks and stuffs his ears to dampen his hearing. Then he notices among the bodies here, Major Simmons is the one missing, just before seeing that exit from earlier with blood pouring all down into it, which is as clear of a sign as you're gonna get as far as which direction this guy went in. So Ross starts to make his way out, but first when we look outside, we see the people of Latveria devastated. Many of them having had their homes collapsed, so they're just trying to grab what they can and get somewhere safer. But they're not given too much time to do this because Major Simmons shows up. And at this point, dude's completely lost it because he's been compromised by the Whisper Man. And now when Ross catches up to him, he tries to tell Simmons to stop, but it's of no use. As Simmons starts glowing, floating, and singing that song, you know, all of the steps that lead up to the explosion of the host and the transfer. So General Ross grabs 2 cars, and I would say that this is kind of like the vehicle boxing glove thing that we see Hulks do every now and then. You know, grab a couple cars, start punching with them. But no, because instead, this is more like when you head to a basketball game and you hear the announcer say, Thunder Sticks. Because Ross is going for not only a heavy, but also loud attack. And don't get it twisted, because by all means, this is General Ross smashing Major Simmons. And that was definitely part of his intention, you know, to rush Simmons and smash before he could release anything. And this attack works because it takes out Major Simmons. But also at the same time, and by design, General Thunderbolt Ross clapped Simmons so hard that it caused everyone nearby to lose their hearing. Which is crazy because this crowd is comprised of men, women, and children. But because these people were so close when it happened, they were all struck deaf. And for the general, the way he sees it is like, it's unfortunate that it had to come to this. And he even says here that Simmons deserved better. But even still, Ross goes on to take the Whisper Man's device. And when he does, one of the locals, a woman here, she's just screaming at Ross, she's deaf. My only child, you've broken us. All of us. And the general just looks at her and says, my men died so you could live broken. Count your blessings in your brokenness and pray I don't come back for you. So yeah, this whole Whisper Man situation took a wild turn that I wasn't expecting. But it's a good thing Simmons told Ross what to do, or this could have gotten way worse. And after this, when we continue the Hydra story, the story of the hammer Spixemi, we come back with it still in the possession of Manx, the Hydra agent, who's now going on about how the hammer is telling him that he's the worthy one and not anyone else, because now he's able to lift the hammer after betraying Valens. And now these guys get so caught up in what's happening here, both Manx and Wills, to the point where they don't even notice until it's too late that a group of Latverians snuck up on them. And now they do what they can to fight these guys off, though Manx, he catches quite a few bullets here, quite a few. He gets towed up, but with the single attack usage of Spixemi, Manx takes out this whole group, only to tell them after that they won't take the hammer from him. Because like we've seen, there's been this obsessive delusion with anyone who lifts the hammer. And we go on to learn more about that as this continues, because then Manx turns to Wills to tell him that he can hear his mind and how the hammer warned him about Wills, as he then goes on to explain the hammer's origin. Because Manx says here, the blood of a dwarven smith of Svartalheim is in the metal. Did you know that? Beaten and tortured, forced to forge a weapon worthy of Mjolnir. He made the hammer, but bled a curse into it to punish Doom and his torturers. He named the hammer Spixemi, Treachery. The wielder of this hammer is cursed to ever be betrayed. And Manx says this as he goes to strike Wills to keep him from betraying him and taking the hammer, of course, only to end up compromising the dungeon structure even further, to the point where they both fall deeper below, alongside of Manx's precious hammer, which quickly turns this into like an all-for-nothing kind of scenario, because the hammer ends up landing on the other guy's chest, pinning him down here, and dude just ends up laughing and saying, "It was mine after all." Manx? Worthy. And right there, it's just like, yep, okay, well, you got it. And next, when we continue Umbra's story, just after he consumed the skull-shaped herb, we're told here the skull-shaped herb gave Umbra access to the Shadowlands of the ancestral realm, but the grasslands there were dead and ashen, and the acacia tree that welcomed him was bone white as a skeleton. Nagiku had promised him a reunion, because like we were told before, Umbra, he's done a lot to get here in order to bring back his wife, Hebo, which I think is how you say it. And when he travels here, he does see her, but not only is she terrified, but she's trying to warn him like, hey, it's a trap. And she tells him that he shouldn't have come here because it's too late for her. And she tells Umbra that he should go back while he still can. So Umbra looks over at Nagiku like, what is this? Because he thought he was going to get his wife back. And Nagiku tells him, you wanted her back. Here she is. And that's where his wife tells him this isn't where the ancestors are honored. It's where they are banished, just before she's dragged back down into the tree. And this goes on saying Nagiku the trickster demon had waited a long time, whispering and tapping at the glass, until he found the one who could not only break him free with the skull-shaped herb, but give him a body worth inhabiting. The doors to the dungeons have been flung open, and their shadows can now claim the world. So yeah, Umbra, he's back with his wife, Hebo. But the use of the skull-shaped herb to bring someone back, it was for Nagiku all along. So yeah, he played your boy like a fiddle. And now from here, the last story we pick up is the one of the freedom fighters, to where we saw the infected Boris come back just eyeballing out of control. And now this continues saying the freedom fighters have known war. First, the war with Doom, then the war with the outside forces who would claim Latveria. Now, they are at war with themselves, and war changes you. And now this comes back with a crazy moment, because as the now monstrous Boris approaches them, Fedor steps forward. And now in the last issue, it was revealed to us that Fedor and Boris were lovers. So now with Fedor seeing his partner turned into this creature, he steps forward and drops to his knees like, please, I've lost everything. Not you too. And it almost feels like one of those movie scenes where one person believes that their love is still in there. And if they only just listen and open their heart. But yeah, this creature ain't trying to hear all that. It just kills Fedor on the spot and he's done, leaving Alexander and Sophie here as the last two survivors from their group. And now this is where the specter that appeared to be Alexander's younger sister, Katerina, goes back to making those kill requests. Because she tells him here, the Eye of Khonshu will see the secrets of everyone you meet. You could hold the world hostage, Alexander. You could secure the future of Latveria. You can go from being a rebel on the run to a true leader, seizing the global stage. But that will require sacrifice. And then she goes on like, kill her, kill Sophia, take the eye, kill, 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 kill. Like this little girl's going in. So Alexander grabs a grenade, he pops the pin, and he tosses it while yelling, Sophia, take cover, because he ain't trying to kill her. And we can further tell as the grenade bounces over towards the creature, and it booms the thing. And man, come to find out, the specter who was saying all these things to Boris that looked like his sister Katerina, it was not her, regardless of how much he wanted it to be. And we're told that his sister Katerina was the type to sing songs, draw horses with crayons. She weaved flowers into her hair, while Alexander, he was the one that carried scars and violence with him. And Alexander knew by fighting for his sister, he's fighting for life, not the death that these Dungeons of Doom reeked of. And that's why after the explosion, when the statue of Khonshu starts to fall, Alexander sacrifices himself to push Sophia out of the way, because he never lost sight of that true mission, fighting for life. But then this is where he hears the voice of his little sister say, "That was stupid. You should have listened to me." As the Spectre then takes on the appearance of Doom, and in a little while we're given a very specific explanation to this. But in the here and now, where you have Alexander pinned under all this rubble, he can't move. So he calls out to Sophia, calling for help and telling her that she can trust him. But then that's where Sophia sees her father, as he tells her, "You don't need him, my darling daughter. I always told you to stand up for yourself." That principle is why we ended up in the work camps. Alexander has been telling you what to do all this time, when you are the true leader. You are the one Latveria needs, and the Eye of Khonshu will light the way to power. So she takes the eye and she leaves. And we're told here Doom is gone, but his treasures remain. And so does his magic, including his shape-shifting Spectre, capable of carrying on his war and his will through others. Armed with the Eye of Khonshu, this rebel might become a conqueror. And that's wild, because her face is already halfway there. And now following the last story, we're given an epilogue where we see this little Latverian kid throwing rocks into this hole that of course leads to the Dungeons of Doom, before he's startled by a voice that tells him that it thought he was someone else, and how she's looking for a bad little boy who's traveling with 4 ill-mannered soldiers and a yellow-haired woman. Then she asks the kid, has a band like that come this way? And now this goes into the return of the Hell Hunters, where you have Wolverine, Bucky, Nick Fury, Peggy Carter, in addition to a bit of crossover with Infernal Hulk. And when she grabs the kid, she tells him her name is Alexandra Nightbringer. She drags him in the hole and he comes up possessed, as a bit of a brief teaser for what's to come. So yeah, with that said, if you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to drop a like and let me know in the comments what you would like to see spin out of the Dungeons of Doom as its own new story. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below where you can go to patreon.com/dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. All right, later.